welcome in everybody. We are going to give it just a couple of minutes for folks to join. But in the meantime, as you're getting logged in, go ahead and use the chat feature and let us know what state you're joining us from. I'm actually joining you from Ohio, where it's a balmy 14 degrees right now. But the snow stopped, so that's good. Two feet of snow in Boston, yeah. We didn't get quite that much. Texas, Virginia, all over. Sunny Florida, love it. Yeah, lots of snow. That snowstorm was pretty wild, and I know icy and cold, yeah. All over South Carolina, Maryland, wonderful West Virginia. Well, glad to see everybody. I'm so glad you're all here. Oh, it's snowing in Michigan now. I'm sorry to hear that. Winter hasn't quite left us. 80 inches of sunshine, Pat says. Yes, lovely. Well, it looks like most people have joined, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Amber Johnstone. I'm with the ALS Association. Thank you so much for joining us for another installment of our Empowering Your ALS Journey webinar series. The goal of this series is to empower you to live fully and with purpose, regardless of where you are on your ALS journey. The title of today's webinar is ALS Clinic Advisor, using patient experience data to share reviews. And this will introduce you to a new tool on our website that'll help you not only locate ALS clinics across the country, but also share your experience and read others' experiences who have attended those clinics. There are a few things we want you to know before we begin. First, rest assured that you're muted and not on camera, so you can relax and enjoy the presentation. Today, we'll be using both the chat and the Q&A features, which will allow you to participate in the discussion. So please take a moment to locate these buttons near the bottom of your screen. And we had lots of people go ahead and let us know where they're joining from, but if you've just joined us, use the chat now to let us know what state you're joining us from. There will be time at the end of this webinar to answer questions, and to make it easier for our panelists to separate questions from general chat, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit your question, and you can do that at any time during the webinar. Questions submitted through the Q&A button will only be viewable by the host and the panelists. We've planned for some time at the end of the webinar to answer these questions. We will have a short survey that we ask you to complete after the webinar. You don't need to do anything to get it started. It'll appear from your browser once the webinar ends. This survey helps us know your thoughts on not only this presentation, but you can let us know what topics you'd like us to consider in the future. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded, and it'll be available on the Empowering Your ALS Journey webinar page within about a week. This is also where you can view previous recordings of all of our other webinars. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our panelists for today. Our first panelist is Pat Dolan, a GIS professional with more than 30 years of experience using geospatial technology to solve complex problems. Pat was diagnosed with ALS in 2016. He retired from ESRI in 2018, but continues his work supporting the ALS community through innovative geospatial applications. Using eye gaze technology, Pat has created maps and conducted spatial analysis for organizations including the ALS Association, Team Gleason, IMALS, ALS TDI, ALS Network, the International Alliance of ALS MND Associations, and the CDC's National ALS Registry. In 2022, he launched the ALS Geospatial Hub, and in 2024, Pat and his wife Mara co-founded GeoALS, a nonprofit dedicated to improving access to care, accelerating research, and advocating for the ALS community. Pat and Mara strongly believe that early and consistent clinic access can meaningfully lessen the impact of the disease, and their work reflects that dedication every day. Next, we have Brian Baldwin. Brian has been with the geospatial industry for nearly 20 years. Brian has been a close friend of Pat Dolan's for 12 years, and Brian proudly supports GeoALS as the internship director and self-proclaimed technical czar. Next, we have Ed Middich, who after a 30-year IT career with the Boeing Company, now volunteers with GeoALS Geospatial Applications Group, known as the Mappers. His work supports the use of geospatial data to improve ALS care, advance research, and strengthen advocacy. Living with bulbar onset ALS, Ed continues to contribute to his work through behind-the-scenes analysis of clinic, legislative, and environmental data. Ed will be hanging out today behind the scenes and active out in the chat. Lastly, we have Jack Silva, a member of the GeoALS Board of Directors and a trusted advisor who has been especially influential in the development of the advisor and the legislative viewer. He joined the GeoALS Mappers following the 2022 loss of Sandy Morris, an amazing woman who lived with ALS and whose legacy continues to inspire his work. Jack's guidance, dedication, and longstanding support have been invaluable to GeoALS. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I am going to hand it over to our panelists to go ahead and get started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to learn about our work supporting the ALS community. I'm Patrick Dolan. I was diagnosed with ALS in 2016 at the age of 46. I'm no longer able to move, speak, eat, and breathe on my own. I can only make slight facial expressions and use my eyes for communication. Thanks to my wife of 27 years, family, friends, my amazing care team, this community, and God, I have a very fulfilling and rewarding life. This is the first time presenting to a live studio audience. I'm using my new synthetic voice from Bridging Voice and Tobii Dynavox I Mobile Plus device to communicate and operate my Microsoft Surface Pro tablet. There will be a slight pause between slides as my synthetic voice interprets the text from my script. Thank you for your patience ahead of time. Tim Lowry. Before we begin, we want to dedicate this presentation to Tim Lowry. Tim was a member of GeoALS who helped develop the clinic survey. Many of you might know him from the Tim Lowry panel hosted by I Am ALS, which educated the public on topics related to living with ALS and caring for people with ALS. He passed away on January 1st. He was one of the great ones. Thank you, Emily Lowry, for enabling him to share his wisdom and knowledge with us. He is greatly missed. Our ALS story. To understand the purpose of the ALS Clinic Advisor, I will share with you the start of my ALS journey. My journey started in February of 2016. I started to trip and fall during my morning runs. When I visited my primary doctor, he noticed that my left calf had atrophy. He sent me to the local neurologist to determine what was causing my calf to lose muscle mass. After several tests over 3 months, the neurologist determined I had ALS. He explained what ALS is, and the life expectancy was 3 to 5 years. His only advice was to get a second opinion from an ALS expert. We paid our $15 copay and were sent on our way to figure out ALS on our own. Finding care. The first challenge was finding an ALS expert. We did a Google search and found that Cedars-Sinai Medical Center had an ALS clinic. Cedars is located west of downtown Los Angeles, California. It was 84 miles from our house. For those not familiar with Southern California, the drive to Los Angeles can take an hour and a half to 4 hours one way. At the time, travel time was not our concern until we made our first trip to Cedars Sinai. It took 3.5 hours to get to Cedars and another 4 hours going home. This was on top of 6 hours being examined by various ALS experts. It was an overwhelming day and commute. We knew this commute wasn't sustainable, especially as the disease progressed. My wife, Amara, would have to do all the heavy lifting. She would get me in my power chair, then get me in the van, and then drive and stop and go traffic for the next 3 hours. And this was only the first part of our day. Getting to clinic. To give you a frame of reference, it takes two caregivers 2 hours to prepare me for travel and getting me in the van. You basically need to create a mobile ICU when you are vent dependent. The entire day from start to finish is a 16-hour day. I never knew until our first trip to Cedars that I married Wonder Woman. ALS Association. After a winding trail led by Google and family making phone calls, we were fortunate enough to connect with Jennifer Claxton from ALS Network. She came to our house to explain the resources available to us to help us navigate the progression of ALS. During her visit, she told us that a new ALS clinic had just opened at Loma Linda Medical Center, which was 5 miles away from our home. I wish that we had that information a couple months earlier. Clinic Day. On our first clinic day at the Center for Restorative Neurology at Loma Linda University Neurology, we met people who drove 3 and 4 hours to attend this clinic. We met people who had been attending clinic for 3 years, who helped us understand what each therapist did and the questions we should ask. They also shared with us their experiences at other clinics and why they chose to drive to 3 hours to be treated by Dr. Rosenfeld rather than go to an ALS clinic that was an hour away from their home. The information they shared with us was gold. That evening, I knew that I had to put my mapping skills to work to help solve these geographic challenges and gaps in information, especially for the newly diagnosed. The challenges, for me, the primary challenges were finding the nearest ALS clinic, learning from others, their clinic experiences, and if we moved to be closer to family, determining which family locations had the best access to clinic care. For my wife, the primary challenges were having accurate contact information, knowing what information to ask during clinic, and learning from other spouses their experiences at clinic. Working with my close friends at Esri, we developed the clinic locator. The locator allows you to find the nearest multidiscipline ALS clinics based on your location or address. I'm sure you're tired of me talking. I'm going to turn it over to my close friend and one of the best GIS professional I know, Brian Baldwin, who will take you on a tour of the ALS clinic locator to show how we address the challenges we faced at the start of my ALS journey. Take it away, Brian.
I don't know how you put the emphasis in there, Pat, but that was fantastic. Pat, thank you so much. It was amazing to hear your voice. As you said, and everyone heard, This is kind of one of the first times he's running through a presentation like this live. It's just incredible to hear. So as Pat said, his primary challenges were finding the nearest ALS clinic, learning from others and their clinic experiences, and if he and Mara ended up moving closer to other families so that they could get assistance, which family locations have some of the best access to care. So the tool I'm going to be walking through is called ALS MND Clinic Advisor Locator. And so let's start off by going to Pat's home address. So in Redlands, California, as Pat mentioned, his challenge was just understanding where there was even care available and what clinics were nearby. So this tool gives you the ability to kind of put this in and just start off with the default search radius, which you can see here is at about 100 miles, and you could change, you could modify based on where you live. The other piece of this that was really important was understanding what clinics have what certifications, what kind of services are available. So really importantly, what clinics have been ALS Association certified? Where are certified clinics? So as I set that filter here, I now see that, I've got my search address right in the middle of this little circle. And as I go farther out from that kind of center point, I'm getting further from clinics. And as Pat mentioned in his story, lo and behold, rather than driving those 3 hours or 2 hours to get to a clinic, there's actually a clinic located just down the road from him in Loma Linda. So as I select that location for any of these clinics, we loaded in all of this data and information to make this as easy to get access to as quickly as possible. So now knowing that this clinic is about 3 miles from my house or from Pat's house, his home address, we have the profiles for the medical director and links directly out to these, their names kind of loading in dynamically, the address, as well as a phone number. And you can click this and it's dynamic and it'll just start dialing directly from this link. A link to the program's website, the ability to rate the clinic, and then also view ratings of the clinic, as well as certifications and memberships that this location has. So great, we have all this information available. You can quickly find out what a clinic is nearby, have the ability to understand where clinics are and what kind of services, certifications, and memberships are kind of part of that. The other piece too is Pat was struggling to understand what clinics and care was located near him as well, maybe in some of his family members' households. So the other location we're going to search for quickly is here in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And so you can see here we have less clinics available, less access. But if I'm traveling somewhere or we want to see who's nearby, maybe family members and looking at kind of longer term care or being nearby some family, you can also quickly find and search for and see, again, across the country. And our goal is really to have this available across the entire world. So the next piece of this that we wanted to highlight, and one of the major challenges is it's great to know where clinics are, but which clinic is going to best meet Pat's needs and the needs of Mara and how his disease is going to continue to progress and change. His needs will continue to change. So there's a companion application that we've created and built out. And again, Pat wishes this kind of information was available, and we just want to make sure if this body of information continues to grow and it's available to as many people as possible. So this is called the ALS MND Clinic Advisor. And so this is trying to capture information and surveys from people across the globe and their clinic experiences. So people can learn directly from others' experiences at clinic, can search by clinic names or neurologist, and also understand really detailed information related to each of the clinics. So here I'm going to go and search for a specific clinic, and maybe I want to understand more about the clinic up in near Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So I just searched for Hershey to be able to understand what service looks like at the Penn State Hershey Clinic Center. And so what I want to highlight here is what I just filtered for on the far left-hand side are showing all of the different surveys that have come in, the date that these were filled out. You can see a number of them from 2023, 2024, 2022. So these surveys are going back multiple years. I'm going to click on the top one here, the second from the top. And what this then does is it grabs that one record and then filters to let me see information related to this on a number of different categories. So we have specific information coming in on the neurologist. And you can see here, there's the ability for free text fields. So someone has filled out and said, Dr. Simmons has a wonderful bedside manner, always takes the time for thorough explanations related directly to the neurologist. There's also the ability to walk through all of these other different service types at the center. So therapies and services, clinical trials, clinic administration, equipment and loans, communication with the clinic, and facilities. And if I clear that off and clear off that selection, we can go through and you can start to see some of the other filters available here for the overall clinic rating, as well as the respondent type. So if you ever want to use one of those filters to kind of just circle down and only see a limited set of responses and surveys, you have the ability to do that as well. Great question, Fred. So are there any areas to capture the not so great things at a given clinic? And that is definitely available. So one of the goals here was to ensure that you can have a voice to be able to put in what your experiences are like and what things you've had positive and negative experiences with. There's a number of these in here that people say, we wished our neurologist had given us more access to clinical trials or more information about what clinical trials are available. And Jack will walk through some other examples of, ways kind of this information is captured in the different fields that are available. And so if I go back for a second to the locator, you can see that within the profile that we searched for, there's the ability to review the clinic ratings, which is a link directly over to that dashboarding tool, the advisor dashboard. And there's also the ability to come in here and rate the clinic. And that's where, as Fred mentioned, you have the ability to provide positive, constructive feedback and provide information about your experience at clinic. The last thing I wanted to leave off on is the ability for you to get access to these tools directly from the ALS Association website. So there's a couple different ways you can navigate the website to get to the tools, and I'm going to show one of the fastest ways that I was able to get to it. As I scroll down on the main, just the home page, going to als.org, under Programs and Services, you can click here for Certified Centers and Clinics. As you come into this page, it gives you a full kind of list of all of the different certified centers and clinics. And there's the ability to kind of sort and filter these here in a kind of traditional list view. And then there's also a link here to use the locator map. And as I select that, this tool, the locator, is just dropped directly into the ALS Association website. So you can use the tool here. And if again, I go here and do a quick search for Hershey and pull up the Penn State Hershey Clinic, we have the pop-up with all of that same information, the ability to rate the clinic, review clinic ratings, and also see those certifications and memberships. So all of that information, everything you saw and more is just embedded directly in here. And if I think of kind of Pat and Mara's experience, this entire workflow and process and the dedication of these tools has been driven by just the need that they saw and this hope and wish to be able to capture information, distill it down, and provide it back to the community. So with that, I'm going to stop and I'm really excited to turn it over to Jack. Jack's going to walk through some of the ways that this has come together, how this information, comes back and forth between the advisor and the surveys, and then walking through kind of what the future holds for it. Thank you so much. And over to you, Jack.
Thanks, Brian. Good to be speaking with everyone. I gonna just confirm that you could see my screen here.
I've got it. Looks great.
Great. Whoops. Make sure here again. Brian.
I'm seeing it in the slide sorter view right now.
Just having a little issue here. Let's get it back to. Oh, sorry, guys. There we go.
There we go.
Cool. All right. Really appreciate everyone being with us today. This is all about you. This is all about the people living with ALS. This is all about, the caregivers that are supporting them. Living with ALS means navigating a care system that can feel fragmented, that could feel overwhelming. Clinics change, doctors rotate, appointments are packed with information. They're often, emotionally exhausting. Some of you attend on this call more than one clinic. Those clinics have different standards of care and very different experiences. Sometimes, these different experiences even come with the same clinic, and you're expected to adapt to the system instead of the system adapting to you. So today is not about Pat and Brian and myself showing you technology for technology's sake. We're just volunteering our time because we love this and we want to help people living with ALS. So it's about how we can help you. And that's why what this platform was born out of. It was, born out of the fact that you could find ALS care more easily, make more informed decisions about care, and help you prepare for conversations with clinics, help you prepare for conversations with neurologists. And most importantly, we want to turn your lived experience, the experience that you're living every single day, into something that can actually improve care for you and for others in the ALS community. And we wanted to do this with the ALS Association. We're partnered with other organizations, but we wanted to pick the ALS Association as our main partner, whose care services team, whose clinic liaisons work directly with you, the people living with ALS, the caregivers living with ALS every single day. We didn't want to pick people that are employed by clinics. We wanted to pick people that are working with the ALS community. So together today, I'm going to walk you through a couple things that you've already seen, but in a little bit more detail. And then I want to tell you too how your voice stays anonymous, how your voice stays protected, and why taking one short survey we call within our platform can have so much of a bigger impact than you might actually expect. So zooming back out for a moment, you're going to see you see the deck here. Um, we're operating all of this that you see today is kind of a one-stop shop. It's all in one platform. Yes, you can access from the ALS Association website. Yes, you can access it from our website, our application on your mobile or your iPad. Um, Everything is designed specifically for people with ALS and their caregivers, and it's bringing together three parts. It's bringing together that the clinic locator. It's bringing together the review summary that Brian showed you, and it's bringing together the survey. The clinic locator, the one you're seeing on the screen, um, won't go over that a lot. Brian did a lot of good detail on Pat's experience. It's going to help you find the clinics and hospitals that serve people with ALS, including those certified treatment centers of excellence, those recognized treatment centers. And that matters too, because again, zooming into this picture here, it matters that you have access to comprehensive ALS care, and it acknowledges the fact that ALS care across the United States, see that people are calling in from everywhere, isn't equal everywhere. Many people don't know what clinics, exist beyond the one that they were referred to. Most people don't know when they get started, as you learned from Pat's experience and probably your own, what services a clinic actually offers, or what questions you should be asking the neurologist based on other people's experience. That clinic locator will start helping those options be more visible so decisions don't feel blind. Going into the dashboard, I understand that there was a question about how can I potentially put some constructive criticism down. Where does it live? Where will it be populated? This is one opportunity where your information that you put will be visible to the ALS community, to your peers, right? This is where those individual experiences come together that Brian showed you. This is where those survey responses are aggregated and anonymized to show, instead of guessing, right, how clinics are experienced by others. What services are available? Like I said, you'll see in the filter by category. What kinds of conversations those patients are having with their neurologists. You can see here that perhaps Dr. Kasarkis wasn't communicating with the person living with ALS in, a way that's actually receivable, that's actually done in a way that recommends, clinical trials or procedures proactively, helping the person or caregiver living with ALS get in front and be proactive about the disease. You'll also see too that, our platform isn't about bashing, right? It isn't about like, verbal attacks. All of this information became within an average review, right? So it's not giving them a negative score, it's more about giving constructive criticism. All of this is accessible to you, but you'll see others within the platform, which you can search by clinic, by neurologist, come from other backgrounds, right? You'll see more positive reviews on here, right? You'll see as you search for neurologists too, some of the neurologists that you recognize as well. And as you see this, as you expand more into these reviews, you'll get an idea of how this neurologist, which you might potentially be seeing, you come here before you go into the clinic, how you should be talking to these neurologists. Okay. Where does this information come from? Where's the heart of GOALS? That's the experience survey. Before I go into the kind of the details of the experience survey, just want to give you a little background. This is where that kind of lived experience that I was talking about before becomes something more than a memory, becomes something more than a frustration. Your experience, good or bad, becomes that structured insight, right? That will help other patients, will help other caregivers, will help clinics understand where care is working and where it isn't, will help your clinic liaisons, your care representatives at the ALS Association better represent you. In doing so, it will help raise the overall standard of ALS care at clinic. Before I go into it, I need to emphasize that while we are partnered with the ALS Association, while we are partnered with other organizations like IMALS, in the World Health Organization, your surveys, which you fill out, they are completely anonymous. We are our own independent platform. They're all aggregated. They are all moderated by a single moderator. No names, no identifying details, no individual responses with those identifying details will ever be exposed. We use best-in-class technology. We have moderators to ensure 100% this reflects this. So now that you saw the dashboard reflects experience across clinics, we'll show you where that information lives, right? And that's people taking the survey and sharing their experience. When someone opens the survey, the first thing they see is the message, GOALS would like to share your ALS experience with other patients and caregivers and helps clinics better understand what patients like you need. That's the purpose of the survey. What we recommend too, we'll go over later, how often you take it, how long it takes. You'll say it's pretty straightforward, and the most important thing is privacy. As we walk through the survey, we'll get started here. We're going to be asking for some basic context, right? Nothing invasive. Things like when did the visit occur? What state are you in? Whether you're a person living with ALS or a caregiver, how long it takes you to travel to clinic, right? How long do appointments usually last? While you're filling this out, again, don't want you to think it's another survey. This is directly going back to you, but some of these basic questions really help us capture the burden of care, right? I know they're not personal details, but we want to hear how reasonable and how non-invasive these questions are, because the month and the year of the clinic that they're, reviewing, um, it's giving us, okay, what state are you in? What clinic name? Where, whether you're a person living with ALS or a caregiver. And it's because that care is often, we want to include the caregivers because these experiences are often, experienced through caregivers, and that voice is essential. Um, Going back along here, getting right into kind of the meat of this immediately. Yes, we're going to be asking contextual questions like, are you still attending clinic? Those questions, again, are helping us understand whether feedback, reflects an ongoing relationship or a past one. But this is the most important stuff. This is where, it gets to kind of the heart of the clinic experience. You can optionally select the neurologist's name. This is optional for a reason, Um, but we're moving into statements as we go along, takes times to listen to my concerns, answers my questions. Again, this is not about being friendly. It's about whether or not you're heard, completing a thorough exam at every appointment, speaking to, we want to speak, and these questions again were formed by people living with ALS, by caregivers living with ALS, and some of our trusted partners, and also some physicians too, some of the top physicians, some of the top neurologists. We want to make sure you're confident, you're trusted, and you have that quality of care within each visit. Recommends clinical trials proactively. Again, you'll see some of those things in the dashboard. They're coming directly from the survey. This question matters deeply because it tells us whether research is something the patients have to ask about or whether it's being offered transparently. Recommends medications, procedures, or therapies proactively. Again, pointing to one of the questions directly from that review summary page. Proactive versus reactive care. That is essential in the ALS community. Respects my wishes to receive or decline life-ending procedures. Anticipates and plans my future needs. Again, this is about whether or not you feel the care team is walking with you. The care team at the clinic, to be specific, is walking with you, not just reacting to the moment. You can add as many neurologists as you want. Therapies and services. Seems pretty straightforward, yes. But this section is intentionally very concrete rather than asking, did your clinic offer good services? We ask about specific services, right? So we have strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. And the key here is not offered. Not offered here is incredibly important. It helps us distinguish between this wasn't helpful and this was never available to me. So PT, OT, some of the table stakes things here are typically offered, speech therapy. But what about nutrition guidance? What about mental health support? What about RT versus, respiratory therapy versus, just physical therapy? So we want each one to be evaluated individually. One of the other most important sections, clinical trial and research. This section is not just asking whether, someone joined a trial. It's asking about access to information and support. So we're asking provides education on current and upcoming clinical trials, either on-site or off-site. That off-site language matters. It acknowledges that not every clinic hosts trials, but they can still inform you about these clinical trials. Offers an introduction to a different clinic if there's an opportunity to participate in a clinical trial. Again, this speaks to collaboration across clinics and whether you feel supported beyond just the institutional boundary, right? This beyond just the clinic you go to. Helps provide resources to access non-FDA approved treatments outside of clinical trials, such as expanded access programs. When you hear now a popular thing about the Act for ALS and it's the year to become, reauthorized, one of the main parts of the Act for ALS is the federally funded expanded access program. Are they talking to you about, being potentially introduced to new drugs outside of clinical trials that fall in the expanded access program? Are they helping you apply for the expanded access program? Again, an intentional question to separate action from just information. As we're going down more, is willing to prescribe off-label medications approved for other conditions that may help with ALS. This also captures a very real part of ALS care and whether, clinicians are open to discussing it. Genetic testing, also an important question. Very important too is that you respond, if possible, to the open-ended questions. Anything else we should know? We're able to capture all of that again and communicate it in a way that is anonymized. You'll see some additional information here on administration, provides virtual clinics. That is, one that's we're starting to see is more and more important. Are they, loaning equipment with you? Are they getting back to your emails on time? Are they able to actually communicate online and not just by telephone? Are the facilities ADA accessible? And then we capture overall rating. So going back to Pat's journey, right? How would that have improved with the access to the advisor by just filling out a survey, by getting to the locator, by saying everything, kind of having everything clearly presented in just one click of a button? Through the survey, through the advisor, through the dashboard. Again, not about complaining, not really about like grading people, not about being difficult. It's making sure your experience is improved. It's making sure your experience doesn't disappear the moment you leave clinic. It's about elevating the standard of care together. We hope this platform won't just take 6 months, 12 months. We want to get the results to the right people quickly. We want to get the results to other patients and caregivers immediately so you can start making more informed decisions. We want to help clinics understand where their care is strong and where it needs support. Again, this isn't about bashing clinics. We want to help them improve. Your feedback goes into the trusted hands too of the ALS Association. Your feedback goes into the hands of the clinic care team, of the care services team, who can use aggregated reports to advocate for your improvements. When we're thinking about call to action too, we want you to use the survey. These are the people that help create the survey. These are people living with ALS. We want you to use the tool. We want you to go in and find clinics that are closest to you, ones that are certified clinics by the ALS Association, ones that could provide a standard of care maybe you're not getting, or help you, empower you to make more informed decisions. You are not just the data point. You are shaping the care that you will receive and others will receive. And we hope this tool really reflects that. Definitely want to make time for some questions. I know we're about 15 minutes out. And I think we have some questions in the chat.
Yes, we did. We got some questions, and there was a little issue with the chat. It looks like not everybody was able to push chats out to everybody. So sorry about that. So if you're not seeing that option in the chat and you'd really like to get a comment out to everyone, go ahead and put it in the Q&A box, and we can address it there. Let me see. So there is a question asking if there's a plan to add any information to the survey about palliative care, or if that's intended to be covered under social work and mental health.
I'm sorry, Amber, you said palliative care, right?
Yes.
So that's a good question. I guess it's through the neurologist experience section. Like there's one that says respect my wishes to, receive or decline life extending procedures, anticipates future needs, takes time to listen to my concerns, and answers my questions. I'd say that captures it the most. However, I don't think we've actually had a direct question about palliative care. So I think that's something that's definitely should be considered and worth maybe adding into the next version of the survey.
Yes, if you don't mind me jumping in, we just
Yeah,
learned
go ahead.
recently, sorry, that palliative care does not mean I'm ending my life. Like it actually is just for comfort. Like you don't have to give up medicines and stuff that you're on like you do with hospice. We did not understand that. So yeah, I love that idea of adding that somehow. Um, so you don't learn it 5 years in like we are. It was very helpful to us later. Great suggestion.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think my clinic, I could see a question like my clinic help addresses my comfort and quality of life, including symptoms, emotional well-beings, day-to-day functioning, through palliative care, something like that.
Yeah,
Could
it,
be
it
a
just
great
explains.
question. So we'll
Yeah,
definitely note that.
love it.
Is there a way for people to submit such suggestions, or reach out to you all for questions or comments?
Yes,
Yeah, any suggestion on the survey? Again, the survey was built by people living with ALS, caregivers living with ALS, and we actually do a kind of well, whenever we're making the new version, we're getting people from the community to help iterate on what we already have. So if you'd like to be involved with that one, if you have any suggestions too, please reach out to us and we can help build on that. Any questions about using the just the platform as a whole, getting to the dashboard, filling out the survey, using the clinic locator. We're an email, a text message, a phone call away too. The ALS Association will be providing our information at the end for you to reach out to us.
And I'll just add briefly too, in both the clinic advisor and the locator, there is a kind of email alias in both of those. So if you ever kind of, lose track of kind of anything you get from this, you can load up, either of those sites and just shoot an email to those aliases if you have questions. The palliative care is a great point. If there's other things you feel like a field is missing or you'd like to see in a next release or a next version, just please reach out.
Awesome. And there's a question about someone getting ready to attend. William's getting ready to attend his first clinic in 2 weeks. What should I expect, and what are the most important questions to ask? And I think we've got a couple experts on the call here that could answer that. Mara and Lori, you've been tagged if you want to speak up.
I think Lori should start, but if that works, Lori, you're so in tune with all this stuff. I have my world and the folks I talk to, but
I'll give you the first shot at it, Mara.
okay, sure. Sure. I I think overwhelming is the word to use, just completely overwhelmed with information and sadness. I can't forget how incredibly gut-wrenching it was because you're still just, if it's your first one, at least for us, it was early on, and it was just gut-wrenching and hard to see people advanced. It was really hard. But as far as like the care and maximizing your time with the people you are with, um, it depends on the clinic. There's a gap, but we were lucky enough to go to two of the top tier ones, and they were just so helpful and they understood that we're processing all this stuff. So they tried to be very good about getting us information, not overwhelming us, putting stuff down on paper. But if your clinic doesn't do that, make sure you got a note taker, bring someone with you. If I think having two people there is a brilliant idea, like you and another person, because it's too much for one person. Um, Pat and I always laugh because we took two totally different things away each time, like completely different sets of information. So yeah, it's just good to try to get as much information as you can. Um, some clinics sit you in a room and bring people to you. That was Cedars-Sinai. Some clinics, you go around to the different specialists. Um, and in those, you tend to also be in a big room with all the people going to clinic that day, which I really like that approach. Some people don't. It was hard on Pat, the first one, to do that, but I kind of like the camaraderie and the chatting with people. But it's hard. It's just a hard time to be dealing with the terminal diagnosis and the horribleness that you see coming. But just know that it's not all horrible. Yeah, I don't know if I hope that answered your question. Lori probably has more
And
to
Mara,
say
if I could
here.
jump, oh,
Yeah,
go ahead,
yeah,
Lori.
that's it.
I
Oh,
was just going to add, Mara, you hit right away. Bring someone with you. You know, it's hard to. There's a lot of information that's shared at that first visit. You're meeting a lot of different people, a lot of the different team members, and it takes a bit to. I'm from the other side where I've been a clinic liaison during those visits with patients and just letting you can just see the sense of being so overwhelmed with the information. So having another person with you can really help. And asking questions. And if you don't understand something, don't be afraid that you're taking too long with somebody. Just ask the questions and keep asking until you understand, or if you leave with some resources. And then if don't, I would say, there may be some questions that come up during that aren't quite, if they aren't answered, it's okay to follow up in between. They will give you a contact person to follow up with. And don't be afraid to use that person instead of waiting for the next appointment, because sometimes it may be something they'd like to bring you in sooner for. So be aware of that. And I would, I know the clinic can be long, as Mara said. It can be exhausting. I would really suggest that I would really suggest seeing each specialist so you get to know each specialist. Even if you don't have speech problems or you don't, have an issue with swallowing or eating, you get to know those specialists, and each one is really integral to your care. And getting to know them right away is great. And they all work together to form the care plan for you.
just have a couple things to add to those great answers. Three things. One, first and foremost, to work with your clinic representative at the ALS Association to speak with them. Also review our patient experience dashboard. That was a review summaries page. Again, don't need to look for perfection, just need to pay attention to like how people are describing communication, where they're feeling listened to. Maybe if appointments felt rushed, that's when Lori said maybe you could slow it down a little bit, intentionally. And write down some questions, as Lori said too. in terms of writing down questions, that's something actually one of the most powerful ways that we've found just based on feedback from other people and with ALS going to clinic for the first time is to use the survey as a question building tool, right? Not just something you fill out afterwards. So think of the survey as a kind of preview of the questions that could happen at an ALS clinic. So even before, you answer a single question, just reading the survey helps you see, what good ALS care often includes, what other patients are asking about, what you're allowed to expect and ask for. So you definitely scan the survey before your appointment, even print it out. You'll notice the questions, whether neurologists listen and explain what your future needs are, whether treatment options and trials are brought up proactively. And then you can turn that survey statements into your questions, right? So like survey statement into your question, anticipates and plans for my future needs could be turned into a question like, what should I be thinking about over the next year or two? Or this the survey question where it recommends medications, procedures, and I forget the last part, but like you could ask, what options should I know about even if we're not choosing them today? So you could kind of flip those questions into the survey questions into, questions that you can ask during the visit.
I think those are great suggestions. We've had a couple of things in the chat, people suggesting starting a journal, using my chart, keeping information that way, which I think is all very helpful. There was another question that asked about whether or not you could attend multiple clinics at the same time and how insurance handles that. And I will say that your mileage may vary, and you should always check with your insurance to see how they handle that. But typically speaking, as long as you're not seeing the same kind of doctor or the same kind of specialist for the same thing on the same day, typically you're okay. But always call and check with your insurance if you have any concerns about something like that before you would go for an appointment. Anyone else have any questions? Well, I think that was a fabulous presentation. I want to thank our panelists, all of the GEO ALS team, Pat, Jack, Brian, Mara, Ed, Lori for jumping on. Thank you so much. Just wonderful information. So watch for this to be uploaded onto our website in about a week. And I hope you'll join us again for our next session of Empowering Your ALS Journey webinar, which will be on Tuesday, February 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's titled When Life Shifts, Supporting Families Through Changes in the ALS Journey. And lastly, don't forget to fill out that survey. Your feedback's so important to us. And I wish everyone a wonderful rest of your day and want to thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much, Amber, and everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you
Every-
all. Really appreciate it.